I hate paperwork. I hate it. I hate keeping up with paperwork. And yet, some paperwork we have to keep up with. There's a famous line in business: if it's not written down, it didn't happen. And part of record keeping is proving that we actually did what we're supposed to do. So, in this episode, we're going to talk about when it comes to OSHA compliance, what records do you have to keep? How long do you have to keep them? And what's the best system to stay organized? Stick around because at the end, I'm going to share with you a special tip that I use to help keep all my stuff organized. Let's dive in. Well, hi, friend. David Sawyer here. I'm a safety coach, and today we're going to talk about organizing OSHA records. That's right. Get excited. We're talking about record keeping. All right. So record keeping is boring. Let's just say it's a boring part of the job, but it doesn't have to be a stressful part of the job. For the most part, everything needs to be kept for about 5 years. Now, there's some things that need to be kept longer. And honestly, with the ability to scan documents into an electronic format, you really should keep stuff forever. So when I have a client ask me, David, how long do I have to keep this? I tell them forever. Just keep it in a format that's easy to store. But before we jump into exactly what you have to keep and why you have to keep it and how to keep it, I want you to go to my website, helpwithosha.com, and download a free OSHA audit checklist. This is a free checklist that shows you everything you need to keep up with if you're going to go into an OSHA audit. Now, if you've had an OSHA audit in the past, this is a great way to review and make sure your team is prepared. If you're in the middle of an OSHA audit right now, there's actually an online course that you can take that will show you exactly what you need to do to respond to OSHA so that you can reduce citations and even eliminate some of the safety citations that might pop up. There's also access to a course that trains you how to train your managers so that your team is prepared for an OSHA audit. But start with the checklist. The checklist is free. It's a free download. Just go to my website, helpwithosha.com, and you can access that free checklist. And that's where you can actually click in and look at the online courses that we have available. This is a game changer because it shows you exactly what you need to do to prepare your company for an unexpected OSHA visit. And one of the first things they're going to look for when they come is your OSHA record keeping, your safety records. So let's talk about what you have to keep up with. Now, the way that I file this away in my brain is there's really 3 different time periods. There's stuff you have to keep for 1 year. There's stuff you got to keep for 3 years, and there's stuff you got to keep for 5 years. Now, like I mentioned, my go-to is just keep it forever. Don't ever get rid of it. It's always nice to have it tucked away in an electronic format. But as far as the actual requirements, most of them are 1, 3, or 5 years. And then there's some information that you got to keep for 30 plus years. And so again, that kind of falls into the forever category. So the first thing we're going to start with is really the first thing OSHA is going to look for if they ever come visit your facility, and that is injury records. Now, this is sometimes referred to as your OSHA 300 log or your 300A summary. Now, there's also a 301 form, which is the actual accident report. So let me break those down real quick, just in case you're kind of glossing over here. So stay with me. You got the accident report, which is a 301 form. So this is where you document what happened when someone got hurt on the job. And you should keep that for 5 years. The next thing is the OSHA log, which is a log of all the injuries that happened that were considered severe enough to be documented on the OSHA log. So that falls into a category as a recordable injury, meaning it's something that goes beyond first aid. Typically, somebody got hurt. They had either they had prescription medication or they went on to days away from work where they couldn't come back to work the next day, or they might even had restrictions where they weren't able to do certain parts of their job. So that falls into a recordable injury, and that has to go on your OSHA log. So you got the 301 form, which is the accident report. Then you've got a log of all the accidents that happened for that year. So let's just say it's 2025, all the accidents that happened during that year. And then you have a summary page, which lists everything at the end of the year. So that's the 300A summary. So those three forms you have to keep. Now, you might have a lot of 301 forms. You're going to have one log and one summary for every year, and you got to go back 5 years. So just count back in time. Now, I'll tell you, the best way to keep up with this is with a binder, and just having a binder dedicated to your 300 injury logs, your 300A summaries, and your accident reports. Now, a lot of companies these days do this online. They might use an online software to keep up with it. That's cool. You can totally do that. The main thing is that you know where it is and that it's kept up to date. So you know where it is and it's kept up to date. If you don't know where it is, we got a problem. If it's not kept up to date, we got a problem. And I'll tell you, big red flag. One of the biggest problems that companies run into is when OSHA shows up and they say, "Hey, let me see your 300 log for this year." They go, "Oh, well, we haven't had any accidents this year." And OSHA goes, "That's great. I still have to see your log." So you have to be able to show that you have a current log, even if it's got nothing on it. You got to have the address, got to have the date, got to have the year filled out. Got to have the company information aside from 0 accidents. So that's the first big chunk of information. I dare say it might be the most important one, or it's at the top if it's not. And you got to keep those for 5 years. So injury records, got to keep them for 5 years. Now, the next thing on the list is training records. So your employees go through training. Let's say you got forklift training, or you got lockout tagout training, you got fall protection training. All of the employee training records have to be kept a minimum of 3 years. Now, again, I personally keep them forever. So when you have a training roster, maybe you have your employees taking a quiz. They're doing either online training. You can do online training through me or through other companies. But when you do online training, you have to keep up with the records. When you do in-person training, you got to keep up with the records. When you do a weekly safety meeting, yep, you guessed it, keep up with the records. So we're talking about how do we keep up with training. Honestly, it can get overwhelming when you start training, and if you have more than 20 employees, it can get kind of bogged down in training records. So I would highly encourage getting a scanner, scanning these in, making sure you have a roster to document the training that happens. And that roster has to have the required parts and pieces for the OSHA requirements. Typically, it's going to be a date, a title of whatever was trained, the name of the trainer, the signature of the trainer, the date it was done. We want to make sure we're giving them the information. So sometimes they'll even ask for, "Hey, what was the agenda? What did you guys go through in the training, right? Did you cover everything you were supposed to cover?" That's where it's nice to have a quiz or some kind of handout to show this is what we went over. All right, so number 2 was training records. Number 3 on the list, everybody's favorite, safety data sheets. So SDS sheets have to be kept. The requirement for those is to be kept for 1 year. Again, safety data sheets can get overwhelming, but usually when you find them and you load them into your SDS binder, you're going to keep them in a binder, either the hard copies in a binder, or you'll have digital copies online, and you want to keep these for a while, right? Now, here's usually the way I handle it is I'll have a list of all the chemicals we're doing right now, right? This is what we have now. And let's say we used to use this one degreaser, but last year we switched over. We started using this other degreaser. I'm not going to delete the safety data sheet. I just simply move it into an archive folder. And that way you know, hey, this is what we used in years past, and this is what we use now. So again, keep it forever if you can. If you're doing hard copies, don't keep it forever in the binder. That's really just going to get confusing. In the binders, you want to only have the chemicals you're using on site. And again, kind of keep an archive folder off to the side. So safety data sheets, that's another type of documentation you got to have on site. Again, if you go in, if an OSHA compliance officer comes into your facility, they're going to want to see safety data sheets for the chemicals people are working with. Do not forget about large quantity chemicals. These get overlooked because sometimes they come in, they're in big tanks, or they get filled on the outside of the building instead of having, 5-gallon bucket come inside the building. So we want to make sure we remember things like gases, welding rods, propane, natural gas, any kind of chemicals that might be coming in on a truck. All right, number 4. The next type of record, and this falls into the forever category, and that's exposure records. So typically we're thinking noise exposure and we're thinking air monitoring. So if you're doing certain types of welding, or you're dealing with dust, or you're dealing with noise, you're going to have to do different types of exposure testing to determine the limits. And that is really critical because, and I'm going to bundle these together, that falls into some of the medical stuff. So when we talk about medical records for employees, sometimes these get kind of, they get put off to the side into HR folders because we're dealing with medical records of employees, and that's totally cool. But if we're dealing with exposure or medical records, we are keeping that forever because you never know when that can come back. And, an employee can leave the company for 10, 15 years, and then all of a sudden they come down with something and they say, hey, I got that because I was working at this company and we were exposed to this type of hazard. And you want to have that in your back pocket to show, hey, these are exposure tests that we did back in the 90s. These are the medical testing that we did back in the 90s. Going back however far you go back. You want to keep it forever. That's something that you want to have forever. Online storage, the best way to handle that. All right, now we're down to the very last category of records you need to keep up with. And this is a question that comes up quite frequently. What about equipment inspections? So let's say we have an outside company coming in to inspect our cranes. How long do I got to keep those records? Well, the requirement is 3 years. So if I got a company coming in to do fire extinguisher inspections, I got to keep those records for 3 years. If I got a company coming in to do, like I said, crane and hoist, or maybe we're doing inspections on fall protection, or maybe we're doing inspections on eye wash stations, any kind of equipment inspections. Forklifts. I got an outside contractor coming in and check my forklifts. I'm going to keep that for 3 years. Now, to me, that's the minimum. That's the requirement, but I would keep it much longer. So, just to recap, the first one we talked about was injury records, the OSHA 300, the 300A. The second one is training records with employees. The third one is safety data sheets. The fourth one is exposure records. The fifth one is medical. And again, those are kind of tied together because you got medical records and you got chemical exposure records. And then the sixth one is in equipment inspections, making sure that you're keeping up with all your equipment. Now, I mentioned at the very beginning, if you stuck around with me till the end, we talk about kind of how you put this into play and keep up with it. I would encourage on your calendar, use a Google Calendar or use an online calendar. I wouldn't really use my Outlook calendar personally because that kind of gets bogged down with meetings and other things. But you want to have a calendar where you can keep up with what's required to be done. So as you go through your OSHA programs, your safety programs, say we get to our emergency action plan. And in our emergency action plan, we talk about fire extinguishers. And we go, okay, we have an annual fire extinguisher inspection that's done every April, right? Hypothetically, we do it every April. This is going to be done by this company in April. You go to your calendar in the month of April and you put that on the list and you put the name of the company and you put their phone number. And then you follow up and make sure that that guy is coming out to check your extinguishers. At the same time, that needs to be done on a monthly inspection. So you're going to have that on your calendar where you say, hey, our maintenance department is going to be doing that. Jim goes around every month and checks our extinguishers. So we got that. So the key here is document it on a calendar, because your memory's not that good. You're not going to remember who does it. And you shouldn't have to. It should be written down. That way, if you get hit by a bus or you win the lottery, right, the good, the bad, if you leave the company, people know what you've been doing. They know what to do. So have it on a calendar. That was equipment inspections. But let's say you could do something even more detailed, like the training. Training, we know, hey, every 3 years we got to do forklift training with our operators. Well, if we're doing that every 3 years, we need to have that on a calendar so we know when we're going to be doing our training. And honestly, you're going to be doing it every year. You're just going to be doing it every year with a different group of people. So calendars really help you stay organized. It's not rocket science. It's just you want to remember to put everything on there. And you're going to forget something, and that's okay, because you're not perfect. You're going to forget things, but stick it on the calendar. That will help you remember. And that way you're just looking at a month at a time. In the beginning of the month, you can go, hey, it's June 1st. I'm going to look at the month of June. I'm going to say, okay, I need to make sure I get these 3 things taken care of this month. We got to make sure that we're doing some noise exposure testing. Now, and again, that was just an example. Calendars are a big help. Excel spreadsheets are a big help. Nowadays, there's lots of software online which you can use to keep track of inspections and documents and records. But I'll tell you, the one thing that I would highly recommend, if you don't already have it, get a high-speed scanner for your records. So I'm not talking about one that you have hooked to your copier. The copier in the office where everyone uses it, that's a pain in the butt. Go ahead and go invest the money in a high-speed desktop scanner, because the one I have is a little Epson scanner, sits on the corner of my desk, and when I have training records that I want to keep up with, man, I run it through that scanner and it turns it into a PDF, and then that PDF can get filed away on my server or on my computer in my records, and that way I keep up with it, and then you can shred the records. Now, what I highly recommend is keep records for 1 year in their written state. It's not, you don't have to do it. This is just what I recommend. Keep them for 1 year in their written state, right? Hard copy, paper records for 1 year. And then each month, go through, scan those in, and drop them into the right category on your server or on your electronic record keeping system. The best record system, the rest record keeping systems are simple. So, number one, have a binder for your OSHA logs. Keep them in hard copy. I would keep those for the full 5 years, and then you're going to digitize and keep them forever after that. And then when you talk about training records, especially training records, because those get so bogged down with so many records, you want to digitize those at least once a year. You're just getting rid of the paperwork, Now, a lot of companies these days are trying to go paperless. It's pretty darn hard to do, but you can do it. And like I said, there's lots of online apps. There's safety culture. There's different things that you can use to go paperless. But the main thing is have a system that's easy to understand so that you don't get confused by your own system and that you can easily explain it to somebody else. Ideally, as a safety manager or a company owner for a small company, you want to be able to delegate this out as quick as possible. So create the system so that you're capturing all the records and you're organizing the records, and then you're putting a system in place to where you can find them when you need them. Because like we said at the beginning, if it's not documented, it didn't happen. So thank you guys for sticking around. I really appreciate it. I hope you found this video helpful. If you haven't already, check out my checklist online for the OSHA audit checklist. Go to my website, helpwithosha.com. You can access the online course there as well. It is a fantastic way to prepare your company for an unexpected OSHA audit. And until we talk again, do everything you can to keep the people you work with safe, because no one should get hurt at work.